Without a doubt, today's then photo is of the oldest and largest pelvis ever featured in this column. Its original owner is a giant ground sloth that lived during the early Holocene era, soon after the retreat of the 3,000-foot thick Cordilleran ice sheet. Its Puget lobe, extending from Canada to just south of Olympia, left behind glacier-carved inland seas, lakes, and rivers that still define this region's topography. As the ice melted, abundant life returned to the hood. Lowland bogs and swamps, including ample flora, supplied megafauna from mastodons to giant sloths with full larders. We'll skip forward 12,500 years to Valentine's Day 1961. Preparing to pour a concrete foundation for a SeaTac airport expansion project, construction workers encountered an obstacle. Lean and compact, pile driver Gordon Simmons lowered himself into a 14-foot deep hole to investigate. "We were about 500 feet from the end of the runway," he recounted in a 2021 interview, "making these landing towers to guide planes in. At the bottom of the pit, Simmons saw what appeared to be a giant skunk cabbage covered with rounded veins, but it crumbled away to the touch, exposing a huge hip bone. I thought, gee, that must be an old cow or something, but it was buried too deep to be a cow." He shouted up to a coworker, "I got a dinosaur down here. Better call the university." And the paleontologists came running. Construction was suspended while University of Washington scientists from the Burke Museum sifted through mounds of wet, unstable soil. What they unearthed was nothing short of astounding. The SeaTac sloth provided the first evidence of these animals in the state, notes David B. Williams, co-author of Spirit Whales and Sloth Tales, Fossils of Washington State. Just as thrilling, it illustrated that interesting stories of natural history are everywhere, even in the heart of cities. The determined team recovered nearly 60% of the fossil's remains, transferring them to the Burke Museum for further evaluation, inspiring years of rewarding research. For Simmons, who continued working in construction until his retirement in the mid-1990s, the story of his find became a well-burnished family chestnut. Not until 2014, however, did he reunite with his prehistoric pal, by then a featured exhibit. In February 2022, daughter Diana Johnson contacted the Burke with a request. Would it consider naming the giant sloth after her ailing father, then in his final weeks? Museum staff enthusiastically agreed. Today, 11-foot-tall Gordy welcomes visitors to the Burke Museum's third-floor paleontology exhibit, its nickname invoking a serendipitous discovery and its intrepid discoverer. Our first then photo shows the SeaTac airport construction crew. From left, Orville Gossage, Effio Ciccati, Don Stites, and Gordon Simmons, displaying a 45-inch wide sloth pelvis, more than 12,500 years old, for a Seattle Times photographer on February 14, 1961. Simmons, originally from Ilwaco, had moved to bustling Seattle, which was preparing for its 1962 World's Fair. In our second then photo, in April 2014, Gordon Simmons visited the Burke Museum exhibit for the first time. The giant sloth originally was named Megalonyx jeffersonii to honor President Thomas Jefferson, a passionate amateur paleontologist who documented an earlier discovery of the slow-moving mammoth in 1799. In our first now photo, at the north end of SeaTac Airport, 4 generations of the Simmons family gather at the concrete anchor of a runway lighting tower, holding a printed cutout of the heart-shaped pelvis. In the back row, from the left, are Steve Simmons, Doug Simmons, Shelley Russell, matriarch Irene Simmons, Diana Johnson, and Gordon Simmons Jr. In front, from the left, are Simmons' grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and spouses, Gabe, Cosmo, Jenica, Tully, Isaac, and Paltiel Simmons, Monty and Megan Russell, Joel Johnson, Anna, Lily, Rob, and James Hampton, and Mark Johnson. In our second now photo, Irene Simmons, Gordon Simmons' widow, holds a plaster cast of the sloth's enormous claw, a perennially popular show-and-tell display for her children and grandchildren. Her husband always insisted that finding the sloth was his second most significant discovery. The first occurred on Valentine's Day 1954, marking the first date with his future wife. In our third now photo, Gordon Simmons' daughter, Diana Johnson, and son, Gordon Simmons Jr., visit the Burke Museum's third-floor paleontology exhibit featuring a dramatically posed Gordy. In our last now photo, a wide-angle view of the lighting tower from below. The Simmons family gather at the concrete foundation as a jet passes overhead.
But, so you must have worked at the PI when you were 2.